welcome back to a new episode of Coffee and Compliance. My name is Ashley, your host for the day, or this is my podcast, so the host in general. But today I'm coming to you with a new thing that I'm doing, which is a video podcast instead of just a voice memo. So this might be a little rocky. Just stick with me. Hopefully they'll get better in the future. But I'm just going to kick it off today with talking about our topic of the day, which is why is HR so emotionally exhausting? I mean, we've heard all of the HR jokes, right? HR is the place where fun goes to die, or HR is like a referee. You know, you're not really liked, but everyone's mad when you're not around. But in reality, HR can be the most emotionally draining roles. So grab your coffee. This episode may feel a little bit like therapy, but I'm excited to kick off our first video episode of Coffee and Compliance. Thanks for tuning in. So before we dive into our topic that we talked about, I wanted to go over my coffee of the day. In my first episode, I shared with you my favorite black coffee, which is the Texas Pecan from Aggieland Coffee in College Station, Texas. That's where I went to college, is at Texas A&M University for both my bachelor's and my master's. So that is my place, and their coffee is also exceptional. But today I went something a little different. This is my second cup of coffee, but it's just a honey almond milk iced latte, just some blonde espresso, some almond milk, and honey. And of course, the Sonic Ice, which is just the best. But yeah, that is my coffee of the day. And let's get ready. Make sure you grab your coffee, your tea, your matcha, whatever you're sipping on today. And let's get started with this episode. So let's start off with talking about emotional labor. It's not just about enforcing the rules or making policies. It's about balancing your own emotions while helping others manage theirs. You've got to be the sympathetic listener, the decision maker, the conflict mediator, all while remaining totally unbothered on the outside. Impossible, right? Like 1 minute you're comforting someone because they didn't get their promotion, and then the next you're having to discipline someone for not following policy. You've got to be a combination of a therapist and also a judge. You don't get to hit the reset button in between those moments. There's no time to emotionally switch gears. You just have to do it. You're expected to be empathetic but firm, approachable but authoritative, but consistent, and also warm. Basically, a therapist, a judge, and a customer service rep all rolled into one. And the wild part, you're not supposed to take any of it personally, even though it's deeply personal for everybody that's involved. So yeah, I don't know who signed me up for this job, but yeah, that's just how it is in HR. So moving on, let's talk about some common stressors. First up, employee conflicts. Sometimes HR feels like a reality TV confession booth. I had these two employees once who ended up at my office because one of them thumbs up reacted to a Teams message instead of replying back or sending a heart emoji or a more positive emoji, I guess. And the other one took it as just very aggressive and dismissive, maybe even a little passive aggressive. That was a whole thing, and it's honestly happened more than once. But yeah, an emoji that sent us here. That's one of, I feel like, the very common employee conflicts that I have had to handle in my career. There's so many others, but another huge stressor being the messenger. HR is often the one delivering the news no one wants to hear. So policy updates, denying request, corrective actions, layoffs, and most of the time, none of this has nothing to do with me personally, but guess who absorbs all of the emotional impact? Us. Always. All of us HR professionals. You're carrying other people's frustration, disappointment, and sometimes anger, all while being able to stay calm, professional, empathetic. You can't just say what you want to say, because compliance. But yeah, that's why my caffeine intake is so aggressive. Let's move on. So one of the hardest parts of HR is that you're expected to be completely neutral. You can understand someone's situation, even feel for them, but you can't always fix it, and that's a disconnect that's really emotionally exhausting. You're sitting there thinking, I get why you're upset. I probably would be too. But your role requires you to stick to policy, consistency, and fairness, even when it feels so uncomfortable. And then somehow you're also expected to leave all of that at work and go home like nothing happened. Like, I'm sorry, my brain does not have an off switch, but it's not that easy. You feel for someone's situation, you're still having to be the one that is doing the termination, having the hard conversations. And it's hard. Yeah, that is something, like I said, my brain doesn't have an off switch, and that's why I definitely bring work home with me more than I should. But let's clear something up real quick. HR is not the enemy. I mean, there are those HR professionals that are in cahoots with your main leadership team, the co-founder, CEO, the whoever of the company, and they may not be pro-employee. But despite the memes, despite the jokes, we don't wake up in the morning thinking, how can I ruin someone's day? Contrary to belief, HR protects the company and the employees, like we talked about in my last episode. And that balance is tough. Sometimes you're advocating behind the scenes more than anyone realizes, but you can't talk about it. And you have some HR professionals, which I would like to think I'm one of them, who just love their employees and love taking care of their employees. They want them to feel supported and happy, and they will do everything they can. But sometimes HR gets all the pushback as well. So I think that's also just something to keep in mind, that yes, you may think HR is the enemy, but it's because we're taking all of the blame from management down. Half the time, most decisions are not on us, but yes. But that disconnect, that silence where it's not connected, where the employees don't know what's going on, that's exhausting because you can't talk about it. You can't talk about what you're doing behind the scenes to advocate for your team. But yeah. So now I want to talk about something really important. This is going to be the longest segment of this episode because I am so passionate about it. And it's talking about how HR professionals can cope with all that they're dealing with in their work life. So how do HR professionals cope with emotional exhaustion? Because let's be real, just log off is not a solution. If it were easy, we'd all be cured. But first, I want to talk about boundaries. And I don't just mean work-life balance, because us HR people, we are always advocating for our team. Make sure you are balancing your work and your life. Don't work overtime. Don't do this. Don't do that. Because work is not your life. But I mean, learning when to hit the pause button, when to step away from a conversation, and when something is just above your pay grade emotionally. There are certain things that you just have to say no to. And it's really hard because HR folks, we're natural helpers. We want to fix things. We want to make it better. But not every situation belongs to us. and carrying everything, you're going to burn out so fast. In my last job, that's what happened to me. I tried to carry everything. I tried to do everything. I tried to fix everything in a company that didn't have it all together. And in the end, I burned out so fast. With pretty much within a year, I was trying to find something else because what I was doing was not sustainable. So hopefully some of y'all can relate to that. But the next thing I want to talk about, kind of segue into, is support systems, which is actually what I have right now. And you need people that you can talk to who understand HR, because explaining HR to anyone or an HR situation to someone outside of the HR field is very tricky. You'll be halfway through a conversation and they'll be like, well, why don't you just tell them the truth? And you're like, oh, but see, that's not how that works. That's not how this works. So yeah, whether it's like your HR bestie or a mentor, a past director that you used to work under, an online community, having a space where you don't have to translate your experience matters way more than people realize. And third, processing the emotional weight. I think that's a really big one. HR, we absorb a lot. And if you don't let that out somewhere, well, it doesn't disappear. It keeps on stacking up. And that might look like journaling, therapy, walking it out after work, or even talking it through on in your car ride before you go home so you don't carry it inside with you. I know better said than done, but I think one of my favorite things is therapy. Whenever I was in my last job before my amazing job that I'm in now, I started seeing a therapist once every 2 weeks, not every week, because let's be real, therapy is expensive, even with insurance. And even then, most therapists don't take insurance. But having someone who I could just talk to about all of the crazy situations that I was going through at work really helped, because they helped me cope with my emotions, gave me resources on how to relieve my anxiety, and then also it was an outlet so that I didn't bring my work home and I wasn't just complaining to my boyfriend every single evening about how awful this was and how this is affecting me and this and this and this. And that ultimately would impact our relationship negatively, which it did. And then therapy happens. And yes, I'm going to say it. Therapy is not a weakness. You know, HR can recommend EAPs and mental health resources to our employees. Why should we not feel comfortable to use them as well and be a role model to our employees, essentially? I tell my employees all the time, I'm in therapy and it does wonders for my mental health, and I highly encourage it if you can afford it. And then also having some resources that are more affordable or free in your community for your employees is something I highly recommend as well. But yeah, so I'm going to take a sip of coffee before we hop into my last thing, which is giving yourself permission to be human. HR professionals are expected to be calm, composed, and emotionally intelligent at all times, but we're still people. Yeah, and you're allowed to have hard days. You're allowed to feel frustrated. You're allowed to need to take a break. I recommend taking a mental health day every now and then for yourself. Even when, you're the one that everyone else comes to. So you have to be on your A game. Take care of yourself. Take care of your mental health. That's the first thing that should always be on your mind. So if you're in HR and this episode felt a little too relatable, just know you are not alone. And if you're not in HR, maybe this gives you a little insight into why your HR person always looks tired, but they still show up. They still show up for you. They still show up for the company and make sure that everything gets done on time. So thank you for hanging out with me today. If you like this episode, make sure to like, subscribe, and share it with your favorite HR friend, or send it to someone who thinks HR is easy, because it's not. And yeah, thank you so much. Thank you for listening to Coffee and Compliance. New episodes drop every Monday morning at 8 a.m. Central. And until next time, keep your coffee warm or cold, as in today's case, and your workplace compliant.